Hey there, aren't horses a bit like buses? What do I mean by that? Well, you wait for ages for a bus to come along and then two come along together. Well, similarly, we've had two new horses from the world of automotive that have just recently been announced within like less than a week of each other. This is by no means meant to be any kind of a comparison between the Ferrari Purosangue, I think that's how you pronounce it, and of course the all-new Mustang, both of which we're going to be seeing the actual production models. Well, we've seen the production models, but both of which we'll be seeing in the market the latter half of next year. So they're both like 2024 models, but they have sort of come out together. So I thought it'd be interesting to actually talk about these two things and perhaps not so much like a comparison of the two, but actually which of them has had a bigger impact, if you like, you know? I think the Ferrari, for example, is hugely significant because this has come from a manufacturer that for years and years and years insisted that they were never going to make an SUV. And in fact, they're still insisting that they haven't made an SUV. What they're saying is this is the first four-seat, four-door official Ferrari. And technically, that's correct. It does have four doors, although the rears are actually suicide doors, or actually they don't call it suicide doors. What do they call them? I don't know, event doors or something fancy like that. But they don't call them suicide doors, but of course the rest of us all call them suicide doors because that's what they are. And it's very similar to seeing a spade and saying, whoa, look, there's a spade. Well, you may not say whoa, but you'll say, there's a spade. Calling a spade. Calling an SUV an SUV. Come on, Ferrari, it's an SUV. You wanted to get into that segment because everybody else has. Let's be honest, all the manufacturers have said they would never join that. We'd never go into that segment, you know. Lamborghini Urus, biggest sales success they've ever had, propping up the rest of the thing. Go right back to the Porsche Cayenne. And by the way, Rolls-Royce Cullinan, Bentley Bentayga, I mean, they're all at it, let's be honest. Any people out there still ranting and railing against SUVs, don't bother, give up. It's a lost cause. Accept them. SUVs are here. They're here to stay. Basically, think of them as the new saloons. Saloons are pretty much dead. I say that, but there's still a few around, and they may still have life in them yet. But, and I'll come to that, but the reality is that, they're not the flavor of the month or year or decade, maybe century. I don't know. But anyway, not at the moment. So SUVs it is. So unsurprisingly, Ferrari have now entered into that market. Will it be successful? Of course it's going to be successful. Are you kidding me? I mean, look at what Lamborghini did with the Urus. Will it be more successful than the Urus? I don't know. I think it'll be on par. I think it'll come up there. It's a little bit different in that it's a unique thing. So whereas, for example, if you look at the Urus, the Bentayga, and then of course the Audi Q7, I mean, underneath they're very similar and they're based off the same platform. And many people thought maybe the new Ferrari SUV was going to be based off a similar SUV-ish platform, so maybe the Maserati Levante. Actually, it's not. From what I know, it's actually based off the Ferrari Roma, which is a bit odd if you think about it, because I would have thought maybe the Lusso. But anyway, it's off the Roma. However, that is reflected in the look. So yes, I mean, to be fair to Ferrari, this is probably looks the least like an SUV. Not even like a crossover, actually. Crossovers have a unique sort of compact look about them. This doesn't. This does have a very elongated GT look. It's got a very long nose at the front. It's got curves on it. And it's got that smaller than anticipated cabin area, I would say. But of course, it will have all-wheel drive. They'll probably, sure enough, at some point when they start to slowly release more assets and photography and videos on the car, I'm sure at some point they'll have them, climbing the dunes and stuff like that. And if they don't do it, then somebody in UAE will do it for sure. It will happen. So, and of course it will have the power, because the V12 was at 715 horsepower, 0 to 62 miles per hour, or 100 kilometers per hour in 3.3 seconds. I mean, that is proper supercar territory. And of course, Ferrari say, we don't make saloon cars, we don't make SUVs, we make sports cars. I don't know why I'm speaking like that when it comes to Ferrari. Hey, we don't make a saloon car, we don't make a SUV, we make a sport car, or the supercar. And so that's what it is. But the supercar for the family. Will it have a big impact? Inevitably, it'll be massive. How much will it cost? Probably well over £300,000, something like that, I should imagine, when it comes out. Like I said, second half of next year, probably. And will it be successful? Yeah, absolutely. I'm pretty sure that at some point, I would say probably by mid-2020. That's if they can build. Remember, we're still in a situation where manufacturers can't build enough cars to keep up with demand. But if that sort of settled down, which is kind of predicted to by sort of spring next year, then I should imagine that by 2024, probably it'll become Ferrari's biggest selling model. That's my prediction right there. It's an incredible thing. But from a pedigree horse, which is what that is, prancing horse, Ferrari, pedigree bred horse, to the bucking bronco. The Ford Mustang, the 2024 Ford Mustang, which literally dropped last night. In fact, I was up till 4 a.m. Looking at all the content as it was coming in and then putting it out onto my Instagram, and I put a little video onto the YouTube channel as well. So, and why was I up? Not just out of being professional, but also because I'm a huge Mustang fan. I just always have been. And I love them. I've driven most of them and came that close to owning one. Would still probably do it if I could. So, yeah. What do I think of that Mustang then? I like it. You know, the thing about these Mustangs is, and the same with the S550, when it first came out, I remember there was a lot of hoo-ha, a lot of people they were spitting blood. They were like, that's not a proper pony car, it doesn't look right, they've softened it too much, they've done this, or whatever. You know, within 6 months, people were lining up around the block to buy that. I predicted that at the time. Remember, I was sitting in the office and I said to my colleagues at the time, like, all this hate right now, and all the same people will be out queuing up to buy the car. And sure enough, that's what happened. And the thing is that over time, that car, I mean, really, I look at that current generation Mustang, if you like, now, I just think it's beautiful. I really do. I just look at it and I'm like, it's just superb. Everything about it, the lines, the way it flows, its stance, the way it sits on the road, the size, the proportions, I think it's just spot on. I think it's absolutely perfect. So is the new one an improvement on that? Well, I think that from my favorite bits of the new car, the rear 3/4, the side profile, they've lowered it. I mean, some people say they've softened it again, but they have lowered it. They have maybe made it a little bit more delicate, maybe not as butch. I think maybe it's in keeping with the times, perhaps a little bit, but it still has a presence about it. And the front, the grille has, if anything, got bigger, and in fact, maybe too big. I think that's probably my only issue with it, is that grille at the front, which seems to have grown a bit taller than it necessarily should do. And if you look at the complete front-on angle of the car, it looks more saloonish rather than coupe-ish, if you like, or sports car-ish. Goes back to what I was leading to earlier. I wonder if that is a ploy by Ford to attune us to the possibility, which has been mooted, even though Ford has killed off all of its sedans, as they call them in America, saloons as we call them here, and only now basically has SUVs, trucks, and the Mustang. But I wonder if that is leading up to the possible introduction, which, like I said, has been rumored for a while, a four-door Mustang. So a Mustang in saloon form. Think like Charger, you know, but Mustang. Because as we now know that the Mustang brand in itself, not the car, which we still equate to as the muscle car, the sports car, but the Mustang brand in itself is fairly elastic, as we've seen from the reasonable success of the Mach-E, the electric Mach-E, which initially people were like, why is it called Mustang? And I was like, why is it called Mustang? And then I drove it and I was like, oh, okay, Ford can call it whatever they like. You know, it's their brand, it's their car. I still prefer to call it a Mach-E, but I can see the Mustang connotations, and I can see the Mustang family kind of happening there, where they're saying, okay, you have a V8 muscle car, and then you can have the electric SUV for when you need to take the family out. So it makes perfect sense. But anyway, I digress. Coming back to the actual car, I mean, the other thing that's very interesting about, there's two more interesting things. Let's touch, first of all, we've touched on the exterior, let's touch on the interior. Extraordinary revision, completely new. It's got rid of that double bubble sort of dashboard that's so traditional and so historic of Mustangs. You know, if you look right back to the beginning, you'd have two hoods basically on each side. So that's now gone, because now there's a huge digital screen that goes across it. So this really brings the car right up to date with modern times. So it's got, oh, by the way, I should have mentioned, the interesting thing about the Ferrari that I was looking at in the interior, this is really unique. Whereas everybody's got these big screens and tall screens and wide screens and this and that, the Ferrari doesn't have a center screen. It just has the instrument panel, and there's an optional screen that's for the passenger side. So it's on the other side of the cabin, but there's no screen in the middle. Interesting. And in fact, they won't be offering sat-nav as standard on that Ferrari because of security concerns, apparently, hacking and all that. But you can plug your phone in, so you will get Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. Anyway, back to the Mustang. By complete contrast, the Mustang does have a screen that goes pretty much halfway or 2/3 of the dashboard. And so you get the instrument panel, which is highly configurable. You can have all kinds of things on it, including an 80s Fox body look instead of instrument dials. And then you've got all the infotainment and stuff like that. Bucket seats look amazing. It's got a manual gearbox. It still has a 6-speed manual. You can have a 10-speed auto as well, but it also has a traditional old school handbrake as well. And something else about the handbrake, it's got a drift mode on the handbrake. So there's a drift button on the handbrake, which is cool. It's also another crazy feature it's got, which is it's got remote rev. So basically, if you're at a car meet or something, I say, oh, what does it sound like? Oh, I'll show you. And you can rev it from wherever you are. You just stand there revving the car. That sounds so incredibly dumb and so incredibly brilliant at the same time, because I just want one. Because of that, because I can do that. That was awesome. So it has those features on the Mustang. Now, what was I going to say about the third thing that took me a little bit by surprise, especially considering, where we are in the world at the moment and where things are going, particularly the automotive industry. Every manufacturer that comes out immediately talks about electrification, hybrids, and, full EVs and stuff like that. Neither of these cars are kowtowed. Neither of these two horsey debutantes have kowtowed to that bandwagon. One's got a V12, 715 horsepower, and enough torque to move the earth, and the other one has basically the same engines it had before, but a bit more power. So now the 5-litre GT V8 has got it's got 480 horsepower, so I think that's about 20 horsepower more than before. It's got the EcoBoost 4 cylinders in there, which I think that itself is up to silly power now as well. I don't know exactly. I'll put it on the screen. And then you've got the Dark Horse version. And this is before, which will inevitably come, the Shelbys and the 350 Shelbys and the 500 Shelbys and the whole racing line of Mustangs, which they've already introduced. These are only for track use or for actual racing. There's a whole series of them. But for road going purposes, the performance version will be called the Dark Horse. And that will have basically 500 horsepower from the Coyote V8. The most powerful standard Coyote V8 so far. I suspect they could probably get a lot more horsepower out of that engine. It's a brilliant unit. So anyway, neither of them have spoken about electrification, hybrids, mild hybrid, or anything like that. They've just said, here you go, here's our new car, and it's good old-fashioned petrol combustion engine. I think that rocks for both of them. That's a big win for both Ferrari and Ford at the same time. And I know in the past history they were rivals. In fact, Ford has now vowed to go back to Le Mans with the new Mustang, which is interesting, isn't it? So there's a lot of parallels going on here, but a lot of interesting and very enjoyable parallels, I think. Anyway, both tremendous cars. Just to conclude, let me know what you think of both of them. Let me know which excited you the most. I will tell you, it's the Mustang that got me the most excited. I've got to be honest. But anyway, they're both terrific. Can't wait to see them in the metal and maybe one day drive them. Thanks a lot for watching.
A big shout out and thanks to Jay Williams over at Air Technic, who are top tier sponsors of Brown Car Guy. Check them out at Air Technic Co UK for exhausts, brakes, suspension and body kits. Plus our other major sponsor, Nayagen Solutions. Much appreciation also to tier 4 sponsors, Muhammad Ali Humaid, Tom Conway Gordon and Reza Adil. And of course all these other guys who supporting on Patreon. Brown Car Guy is eternally grateful. Hey, think about joining them over at patreon.com Brown Car Guy. If you can't, don't worry. Just make sure you're subscribing to the YouTube channel and website. Plus follow on social media by searching for Brown Car Guy.